Okay, sorry for the long delay in videos, guys. This is Norman Gardner. It's been a while since I made one. Today, I want to talk about something that I've heard and seen and experienced online atheists do, and it really annoys me. Okay, this video is not going to be about the existence of God. It's going to be about atheists, the existence of atheists, and something they do, which irritates me. And the reason it irritates me is because it's kind of scummy and it's kind of it is not kind of, it is dishonest, and is just a way of wasting time and fooling ignorant people. This is what they do. Suppose innocent bystanders was just walking on the virtual space and just mentioned something about relating to God or relating to religion, and atheist comes up and says, "Hey, there's no evidence for God. Prove me wrong. There's no evidence," or some variation thereof. There's no evidence for God. That's the key thing they say. There's no evidence for God. So I don't believe in God because there's no evidence. So you can prove there's no evidence. They say the statement, "There's no evidence for God." This is scummy. This is dishonest. This is wrong. Now, you might think that's a strong reaction. Strong reaction, just a simple statement of fact. Here's the thing, okay? We don't live in a vacuum, all right? First of all, it's very confrontational. It's asserting something without providing any proof for it. You're just stewing out there, and then from then on, you have the upper hand in the conversation. You've thrown the first punch, as it were, and the other person's staggered back and has to, "Oh, yes, there is. There's evidence for God. Let me show you this." And then the person says, "No, well, that doesn't count as evidence." And then you say something else. "Oh, that doesn't count as evidence. It's not testable." Stop. Okay? Excuse me. Who the hell are you? Internet stranger? Why are you talking to me? Why should I care? Why should I give a crap about anything you say? So you come over and you say there's no evidence for God. Well, first of all, you're wrong. It's obviously false. It's not that hard to find evidence for anything. If I want to talk about the world being flat, I could say, "Hey, look, the horizon's flat. That's evidence." This isn't a court of law. This is the internet. We're just talking. You don't need anything can count as evidence. So I'm just pointing out how easy it is to find evidence. It's not hard. So saying there's no evidence for God is a lie. It's just a lie because it's not true. All right? Evidence means material to prove a point. You can find material to prove a point for almost anything. Things that are way more crazier than God, like the flat earth, or anything you like. I could say there's unicorns. Why there's evidence? Well, because there's pictures of unicorns. Well, those are just paintings. Well, you could find evidence. It doesn't matter. See, I'm just pointing this out because it's not that hard to find evidence. It's not that hard to find evidence, and it's dishonest to say there's no evidence for God. A more honest thing would be to say, "I don't see any evidence for God." That would be more honest. But you're immediately starting off with, "There's no evidence for God." That's a lie. That's a lie. And I'm already going to say, "I don't want to talk to you," okay? Or I'll tell you to prove your claim that there's no evidence for God. Prove that there's no evidence for God. And you might say, "Oh, I can't prove a negative." Well, then why don't you stop freaking making that claim then? If I found annoyed, it's because I wasted hours of my time talking to these people, and they don't listen to anything. And then you realize they weren't even interested in listening. They're not interested in the truth. All they care about is being right on an internet argument, which is the stupidest thing to care about. If I argue on the internet, it's not because I want to be right. It's because I find the argument interesting. Because life is short. I have much more interesting things that I care about than you, internet stranger, on the internet. There is evidence for God, okay? Because evidence is really easy you can find evidence for anything. It doesn't mean that there's proof of God. I'm not saying that. But it doesn't mean that your view, that I don't see any evidence for God, is the default position. That's another thing people are telling me. "Oh, that's just a default position. You got proof." No, it's not. No, it's not. Because you don't see any evidence for God doesn't mean there is no evidence for God. Doesn't mean that we have to argue on the rules that you set up. Who the hell are you? You're just some guy on the internet. I don't care what your personal view is. If I did care, then I would take your views seriously. But I don't. You have to prove it to me. I don't know you. You're just a stranger. I'm not going to argue with you about anything until I am convinced it's an interesting argument and not just a bunch of shit. Here's the thing though, okay? I'm going to try to be fair, all right? Most people that say this, I don't think they realize it's a lie and it's a skeezy, it's kind of like a rhetorical trick. It's sort of like a psychological trick to make people feel uncomfortable and defensive. Hey, there's no evidence for God. Tell me. Most of the people that say this, they don't know that. They've heard this phrase, this trick, said by other atheists who probably can maybe convince them to become atheists, and they repeat the same thing. All right. Now, so in fairness to most atheists, I don't think they realize how offensive this is. And I am going to say offensive because we're talking about human relationships here, okay? You come up to a conversation someone else is having, you start by throwing a confrontational absolute statement down, and you pretend that statement is just the truth and you have to prove it wrong. That's insulting and rude, all right? If you want to have a conversation, we have to at least respect each other enough to be honest with each other. When you say there's no evidence for God, that tells me that you don't mind making absolute statements and not proving it. Okay? If you want to say that, if I want to say the sky is blue, you can ask me to prove it and I can prove it. If you say there's no evidence for God, prove it. Otherwise, just shut up. Now, once you go past that point, then we can actually have a conversation. And maybe it'll be useful, maybe it'll be interesting or enlightening, or maybe it won't. But if you start off with a lie, that's what it is. It's a lie. If you can't prove it, it's a lie. There is evidence for God. Not that hard to find out. Then, if you start with a lie, then I have no ground to start with you. I'm just going to ignore you, or I'm going to make fun of you. And I'm sorry, but you brought it on yourself. So Christians, or anyone who believes in God, if someone comes up to you and asks you, "Hey, can you provide some evidence of your God?" You can say, "No, I don't need to." All right. If they want to have a conversation, they should be polite about it. They don't just come up and just prove. I don't need to prove anything to you. Okay. All right. If you're open, because honestly, someone who asks that question, who has that attitude, they're not going to be open to anything anyway. Because you can say, "Oh, this is the evidence," and then you can say, "Oh, that's not what I meant by evidence. This is what evidence means." And I don't care what your definition of evidence is. All right. We're not in a court of law. We're in a conversation on the internet. Okay. So you don't get to decide what evidence is, and I'm not really interested in agreeing with you what evidence is anyway, because you've already shown that you don't care about the truth, you care about being right, which is why you're saying there's no evidence for God, which is a lie. But you're doing it because it's a very effective way of winning an argument, or at least saying that you've won the argument. "Oh, I told he couldn't give me any evidence for God. I'm so smart." We know maybe you're not smart, maybe you're just an asshole. Just a thought. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.